75 years ago, in February, we, the people of the United States, made a mistake. This mistake was an injustice that violated the rights of tens of thousands of American citizens. 75 years and 8 days ago, on February 19th, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which led to the internment of nearly 120,000 legal residents of Japanese descent. Over 2/3 of those interned were natural-born citizens of the United States. Among those affected were members of my family. Some context. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, immigration to the United States was on the rise. In particular, immigrants from Asia began arriving on the West Coast. These immigrants were met with a great deal of hostility. It's no secret that at the time, our country was awash with racial discrimination against a variety of groups. On the West Coast, this discrimination largely targeted Japanese Americans and others of Asian descent. Some of these hateful sentiments were expressed in their neighborhoods, while others were expressed in print in the name of keeping the peace. Local and state governments passed regulations and laws banning Japanese Americans from purchasing property or from residing in certain areas. While some areas may not have made it illegal for Japanese Americans to live there, they certainly made it clear that those of Japanese descent were not wanted and would not be tolerated. Some even expressed threats of physical harm, varying in their degrees of subtlety. This was our nation in the first half of the 20th century. The racist sentiments escalated further after the Japanese Empire attacked Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. On January 14th, 1942, FDR issued Presidential Proclamation number 2537, requiring immigrants from World War II enemy countries to register with the US Department of Justice. My great-grandparents, who had been born in Japan, who were legal, law-abiding residents of America for decades, were required to register with the government. I have a photo here of my great-grandmother, Tokuyo Fujita. It's her alien registration card. She came to the United States in 1905 at the age of 27. For 37 years, she had been a loyal, peaceful resident of the United States. She and other long-term legal Japanese immigrants were required to carry these cards with them at all times. They had been barred from becoming natural citizens based only on their race, and she could be required to produce this card by police at any time. Further restrictions were placed on her ability to travel, her residence, her place of employment, along with the possession of simple objects like cameras and radios. Imagine being told by your government that you are not trusted, simply because of the place where you were born, something you have no control over. That your race is the only reason why you cannot become a citizen. Now consider my grandparents, who were born in the United States. They spent their entire lives in this country. They, and many like them, were targeted by hateful speech and unjust laws as well. Imagine continually trying to justify to your neighbors, to your fellow countrymen, that you are American, that you were born here. Imagine being told you cannot live in certain areas or own certain property, that you cannot travel freely and must submit to being stopped and questioned by police simply because of how you look. This was my family's experience. There are some who may argue these steps were warranted by the war and the attack on Pearl Harbor. To my knowledge, historians have not identified any espionage or sabotage that was prevented by these steps and the ones that followed. Furthermore, this registration was merely a stepping stone to a larger, racially motivated violation of civil rights. 75 years and 8 days ago, FDR signed Executive Order 9066, which authorized the military to exclude any person they deemed necessary from specific areas of the country at the discretion of the Secretary of War. In the spring of 1942, all people of Japanese descent on the West Coast were forced to leave their homes, their places of work, their communities, their possessions, and relocate to internment camps guarded and overseen by our government. They were given as little as 3 weeks to put their affairs in order and prepare for their relocation and internment. These Japanese Americans were taken to 10 different relocation centers. These camps were, in many cases, quickly and shoddily built, often without adequate room for the residents. In some cases, 25 people would occupy a space built for 4. My family was taken to an internment camp called Rower in Arkansas. Those are members of my family, by the way, including my grandmother. While these facilities functioned like small, self-contained cities or towns, and we refer to them as internment camps, these Americans were imprisoned. without cause, due to a factor beyond their control, their heritage. While these camps paled in comparison to the horizon of the Holocaust, that is a very low bar to clear, and it does not diminish the injustice of these actions. My family was forcibly relocated to the other side of the country. They were guarded and monitored, surrounded by walls, fences, and barbed wire. Imagine being told that within weeks you had to leave your home, your community, and report for relocation and incarceration. You've done nothing wrong. You've committed no crime. You are a natural-born citizen, and you are imprisoned by your government. You are given no trial. Imagine trying to decide what possessions to take with you, because you can only bring what you can carry. Any other property must be sold immediately or be forfeit. In a few mere weeks, you'll be required to vacate your home, leave your job, your school, and go somewhere. How would you feel in those weeks? The executive orders and actions that led to the unwarranted registration and imprisonment of my family made no mention of race, yet they overwhelmingly affected people of Japanese heritage. A few thousand German and Italian nationals were interned due to individual concern, while all people of Japanese descent on the West Coast were affected, regardless of citizenship. By the way, this action has never been ruled unconstitutional, despite overwhelming consensus that it violated the highest ideals of our republic. Tens of thousands of people were presumed guilty without trial, simply due to their race. The order authorizing this kind of action was not rescinded until 1976. In 1982, a US government commission determined that the internment had not been justified by military necessity. Following this conclusion, in 1988, President Reagan signed into law the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which stated that, quote, the nation's actions were based on racial prejudice, wartime hysteria, and a lack of political leadership, end quote. The act also apologized for the treatment of Japanese Americans 40 years prior. Presidents H.W. Bush and Clinton followed through on the actions outlined with the act, and my family has a copy of the apology letter signed by President Clinton in 1993. In 2014, the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia commented on the Supreme Court case that supported the internment. He said that the internment and legal support for it, quote, was wrong, and I think we have repudiated it in a later case. But you are kidding yourself if you think the same thing will not happen again, end quote. He further explained that, quote, it was wrong, but I would not be surprised to see it happen again in a time of war. It's no justification, but it is the reality, end quote. This is our history. We, the American people, our nation committed this injustice. And I know that the harsh truth of our nation's history can be difficult to handle. I understand that. But it's important to know and reflect upon the darker parts of our history. Some of you may be feeling uncomfortable or guilty or feeling any number of other emotions. That is normal and it's understandable. But that's not why I'm speaking to you today. It's not what I'm trying to achieve. I neither want nor need your guilt or your discomfort. What I need is for you to be informed. I want you to know that this happened, to understand why it happened, and to understand our American history of racially based injustice. I need you to understand that this was a violation of the noblest principles on which our nation was founded. I'd like to tell you now about my grandfather, Robert Seiki Fujita. Yes, that is me in the photo. He died when I was 5, so I never really got to know him very well. I am, regardless, incredibly proud of what he did and what he stood for. I've always known him as Ji-chan, the Japanese word for grandfather. He was born in Montana, and he grew up in Seattle. His Japanese name was Seiki, which, by the way, is my middle name, but he went by Bob. Unlike my grandmother, my great-grandparents, my great-aunts and uncles, he didn't go to the internment camps, because on December 17, 1941, 10 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the US Army. He didn't see active service during the war until 1944, because shortly after his enlistment in the Army, the military put a hold on all active service by anyone of Japanese heritage, regardless of their citizenship. While I don't know the details, Ji-chan told my father that shortly after he enlisted, he was placed in a stockade while the Army was trying to decide what to do about Japanese Americans serving in the military. He told my father that there were prisoners of war from Germany and Italy, held in the same location but under less strict supervision. These enemy combatants had been granted more freedoms than he, a loyal US-born citizen. He was trusted less than those who had actively fought against us and our allies. The military banned active service by Japanese Americans until 1943, so instead he worked as a projectionist on an army base here in the United States. However, during that time, the military was so impressed by the dedication and patriotism of the Japanese Americans who served that the existing ban was reversed. This resulted in the formation of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, known as the 442. This is their insignia. The 442 was composed entirely of Japanese American soldiers, including my grandfather. During the war, it would go on to be the most decorated regiment of its size in US history. In 1944, the 442 was deployed to Italy, southern France, and Germany. Keep in mind that throughout this time, tens of thousands of Japanese American citizens remained imprisoned in the internment camps. Imagine having that level of patriotism, to believe so strongly in the ideals of our republic that you are willing to put your life on the line for the United States, the same country that currently incarcerates your family. That is what my grandfather did. He responded to injustice by embodying bravery and patriotism. Jicha sustained a shrapnel injury and later took a rifle bullet to the shoulder that ended his active service. An inch in a different direction and he could have died. He fought and nearly died twice to prove that where your parents come from does not define how American you are, that the color of your skin and hair or the shape of your eyes has no bearing on your ability to serve our country, that where your family comes from is no indication of the content of your character. He was an infantry grunt, and yet I'm in awe because there's no way I can live up to this example. I hope you can be inspired by him as well, because I think that his story and the story of the other brave men of the 442 is a model of how to stand up to injustice. By embodying the most noble ideals, by fighting for what you believe in, you make a statement that echoes through history. We cannot forget the sacrifices made by the heroes of our past, and we cannot forget what they stood for. We must honor their actions and uphold those ideals for which they fought. So what are those fundamental American ideals we should fight for? I'd like to end by reading a couple quotations that I think outline some of those ideals. As I read them, please take a moment to reflect on the values and ideals espoused and think deeply about where you stand with regard to these principles. Quote, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America," end quote. That is the first sentence of our Constitution. It is the bedrock of our government. Our government was founded to establish justice. It was founded to promote the general welfare and to ensure domestic tranquility in pursuit of a more perfect union. Our actions during World War II did not unite, but in fact literally divided our nation. One more quotation, which I have modified slightly in an effort not to exclude 50% of the population. I hope you'll forgive the arrogance of that modification. Again, please take the time to think sincerely as to whether this is a statement you can truly say you support. Quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all humans are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," end quote. This sentence from the Declaration is, in a way, the foundation of our country. With this sentence, our founding fathers set in motion the events that led to the formation of our republic. It states plainly that our country was founded on the belief that all people are endowed with these rights. During World War II, nearly 120,000 people were denied their right to liberty. These principles are the bedrock of our nation. They are not partisan. They are not liberal. They're not conservative. They're not progressive, libertarian, socialist, or capitalist. They are not statements from the Democratic Party or the Republican. They are not from the red states, the blue states, or the swing states. These principles, these ideals, transcend political parties. We should aspire to the more perfect union that our founders sought. Know our history, the good, the bad, the unjust, and the inspirational. Know it, understand it, respect it, and learn from it. That is all I ask. Thank you for your time.